Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Green Bay Football Show, the 2024 Draft Edition. With Dave Heineck from Business Fitness, we appreciate you at all times in every aspect, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
And the Packers historian, John Dodds, our producer, Jason Ruck, and he is assisted by John Pearson. JD, you went everywhere, spanning the globe to talk to people who covered many of the players the green and gold picked in that draft.
Yes, one of the charms of having a Marquette site on the 24/7 network is that there are a network of 150 other schools, and we were able to get to the publishers of Arizona, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Oregon State, all who covered players that were picked by the Packers last weekend.
That's a treat. Let's get right to it.
We weave NetSuite into the DNA of your business. There are many threads in your organization. Over time, some become tangled. When NetSuite is woven in as your primary business system, the overall fabric becomes smoother, stronger, and more flexible. We at Business Fitness are a NetSuite success agency. With decades of NetSuite experience across hundreds of clients ranging from 3 users to billion-dollar enterprises, we love what we do. Whether we're helping you implement NetSuite for the first time or helping you improve how it works for your company, our focus is our relationship with you and ensuring you get the most from your software. It all starts by us listening. We get to know you and your organization. We seek to understand the good things you are committed to accomplishing. And together, we create an amazing tapestry, one that serves your entire company, allowing you and your business to thrive at this unique moment in history. This is possible because we're an ambidextrous organization. We see the big picture and the details, enabling us to serve you in both creative and strategic ways. Contact us now to schedule a conversation. We'd love to help you weave NetSuite into the DNA of your business.
Well, let's get right into the draft with the first pick. At pick 25 in the first round, the Green Bay Packers took offensive tackle Jordan Morgan from Arizona. And joining me from the Wildcat Authority, the 24/7 Arizona site, is Jason Scheer. Jason, first of all, thanks for joining us, and please tell us what you know about what we should all know about Jordan Morgan.
Thanks for having me. And Jordan Morgan is a story that he's a local kid from Marana, and so Arizona fans had a real vested interest in his success. And so when he got drafted by the Packers, with everything that he's gone through with the knee injury and all that, Arizona fans were ecstatic. It was a big deal. He did everything the right way. He's an Arizona Wildcat through and through. Could have transferred, could have gone to the NFL despite being injured. He probably wouldn't have been drafted as high, but he would have been drafted. Chose to came back and really stuck around with the program when it was at its ultimate low. And so there's a lot of happy people in Tucson and Marana right
now. Now, does he play strictly offensive tackle for Arizona, or could he switch, or what? Tell us about his versatility.
I mean, I think he's capable of switching, but for Arizona, he was always a tackle. That was his natural position. He played guard maybe a few times because of the emergency situations, but he was a tackle. And the thing that's interesting with him, though, is that even though he was a tackle, his offensive line coach, Brennan Carroll, last season, they did a lot of cross-training. So they would move guys around. But what happened was it was just too obvious that Jordan Morgan was such a good tackle that there was just no reason to move him around. So it'll be interesting to see if he does move around at the next level. But at the college level, he was definitely just a tackle, and a very good one at that.
One of the best players that came out of the Pac-12, in fact, which, sorry to say, the last year of the Pac-12, but it was very competitive, was Latu, the outside linebacker edge rusher for the UCLA Bruins. And it sounds like when Morgan and Latu went at it, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was awesome. That was one of the better individual matchups, to the point where I even asked the head coach, Jed Fish, about it. He said, look, I'll be watching like a fan. Like, I'm really curious. These are two, very highly rated, regarded guys. And Morgan held his own, and it was a good battle. And I can't recall a game where Morgan really ever played poorly, where you said, man, he's getting beat up, right? Like there'd be games where maybe he got beat once or twice, but he always recovered nicely. And the Pac-12 had very good defensive ends. I mean, there were guys on each team. There was one guy, Utah had guys, Washington had guys, and in every game, Morgan more than held his own.
Well, it's interesting, the Senior Bowl, I always watch that, tape record all the practices, and then the game, because the Green Bay Packers focus on the Senior Bowl. It's almost like they put more weight on that than they do with all the other film. But he had a very strong Senior Bowl week where he was dominating in one-on-one drills, and nobody could get past him.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. He moves really well. I mean, there were plays that Arizona ran where basically it was him in open space blocking on screen passes, and he did it really well. So when you get in that one-on-one environment where a lot of it is just bull rushing and all that, Morgan moves so well that it doesn't surprise me that he had success, and they were able to use him in a variety of ways with blocking, where he was the lead blocker. And there's a couple plays I think they're on YouTube where they'd run a screen and he'd be in the open field keeping up with the running back. I mean, he's very natural moving. And so in those one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl, it doesn't surprise me that he had success. He's really good, number one. And number two, he just moves really well.
The other thing I thought was interesting is I always watch Mel Kiper's mock drafts. And one of the mock drafts, he was saying that he had Morgan at the tail end of the first round, and he said his tape, he had the knee injury 2 years ago, and last year struggled a little bit, but he said, get another 6 months removed from that. He thought the second half of Morgan's play last year was just a cut above, and he said, can't wait to see or project what he's going to do from now into the future if that improvement keeps going.
Yeah, that knee injury was bad. There's no doubt about it. And, his rehab was fast. Actually, it was faster than it was supposed to be. He got back like a month earlier than they expected him to. And I think that he was a little slow. There'd be practices where they'd have to hold him out a little bit because of the soreness, but he kind of just wanted to go. And, he played quite a bit early in that season, but you could tell he was a little rusty and there was some soreness because of how fast he came back. And I think once that went away in the second half of the season, that was some of the best ball that he's played. And Mel Kiper's right. I think now that the further away you get from that injury and that soreness, the better he's going to be. And, it showed. He sat out the Alamo Bowl because he didn't want to take the risk. No one really had any issues with it. But you could just tell Arizona wasn't nearly as good without him on the field. And there's just no reason for risk. But early in the season, it was almost, I don't want to say scary, but it was a little surprising with how fast he came back with his size and that injury. And he came back really well. And he said that mentally he would think about it a little bit. But in the second half of the season, you would have never known that he was injured.
It's interesting, toward the end of the first round, the Packers had the 25th pick. Dallas had the 24th pick, and there were a lot of thought that Dallas was going to go for an offensive lineman, possibly Morgan. And they flipped, I think, 24 to 29 with Detroit. And they looked at all the teams after them. They thought Green Bay was going to probably take Cooper DeJean. They thought that Tampa Bay would take an edge. They thought Buffalo would take a wide receiver. And they thought Morgan was going to fall to 29. And then the Packers took him immediately. You can't believe anything you read or hear come draft day. And they were visibly shaken by it. They ended up taking Guyton, the tackle from Oklahoma. But they were saying that Morgan was more ready this year, they thought, at left tackle than Guyton or some of these other Mims from Georgia. They projected longer term, while Morgan was more of a plug and play.
Yeah. Locally, I thought there were a few of us that thought he was going to the Cowboys. Like, we even tweeted before the draft, look for Jordan Morgan in the Cowboys. They definitely thought that he would be around with that 29th pick. To me, he is plug and play right now. I think he is ready to play and play successfully at this level. His offensive line coach, Carroll, basically said the same thing. He's a guy where, he's going to get better and there's things to improve on. But in terms of his base skill set and what he's good at now, I don't see any reason why you can't put him in a game and have him play and have him be successful in the NFL.
The other thing that should make Packer fans feel good is the Washington Commanders, excuse me about that. The Washington Commanders were trying to trade up from the second round, early in the second round, up into picks 20 to 25 to take Morgan. They had him as their left tackle. They scouted him. So he was highly thought of by other teams, which is interesting. How was he to interview, and what was the dynamic in the locker room? I think he was named captain, was he not?
Yeah, I mean, he's great. I've never heard any complaints about Jordan Morgan, the person. Great locker room guy, great interview, very honest, very humble. And he's interesting. Packer fans will notice when he hits the field. He loves horror movies, and so he's got horror movie villains like tattooed all over him. And it's hilarious because he's this quiet guy, and he's like, I just love horror films. And so there's cool stuff to know about him off the field, and definitely one of the leaders of the offense. All the other offensive linemen looked up to him, had a great rapport with the quarterback and the rest of the linemen, and just a really, really good dude. And just as evidence of this, he was drafted on Thursday, and 2 days later, he's at Arizona spring game signing autographs, meeting with his ex-teammates, meeting kids in the stands. I mean, just a really overall great guy.
Well, we've been talking to Jason Scheer from Wildcat Authority, and we appreciate the insight. And maybe get back to you again. Maybe if you come up with any other stories or information, we'll be looking. Where can we find your site, and where can we find you on Twitter?
WildcatAuthority.com, and then at Jason Scheer on Twitter.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you for taking time out.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me.
Well, in the second round at pick 58, the second pick in the second round, the Packers went safety, and they took Javon Bullard from Georgia. Just under 6 feet, is 5'10 and a half, 199, runs a 4.4540, and he's from Milledgeville, Georgia. And joining me to talk about it is from the Georgia site on 24/7, Jordan Hill. Jordan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be with you, John.
Can you tell us a little bit tell Packer fans what they need to know about Javon Bullard?
I think they should be really excited. I really enjoyed watching Javon as part of the Georgia defense. He's a guy that, sometimes you wonder about physicality with a defensive back. You do not have to wonder about that with Javon Bullard. Like you said, you went through his measurables, but he's a guy that he loves to hit. And I think the thing that, if I'm a Packers fan, what has me the most excited, he is very willing to be wherever he's got to be on the field. He talked about it during the pre-draft process, wanting to play wherever they needed him, wherever he landed. He did that at Georgia. He was Georgia's nickel to start, really, when he kind of became a household name for Georgia fans. Then last season, he moved to safety, did a very good job there. Veteran guy, very high football IQ. I think if you're a Packers fan, you got a lot of reason to be excited. And if I were a fan, I'd be excited just by his reaction when he got the call. You could tell he was super pumped. Got some former teammates up there in Green Bay. I think he's going to do very well with the Packers.
Yeah, the interesting. Green Bay probably had the least talented safety room out of the 32 teams last year. And they spent $17 million on Xavier McKinney, the 24-year-old free agent from the Giants. And they were looking for that one other wider. They wanted to get the safety who could guard wide receivers on the slot. They wanted a safety who would be tough enough to go up in the box and stop the run. But they also wanted a safety who could do the third thing, which is play center field if they needed to with some instincts. And it sounds like Bullard is just the ticket.
Absolutely. I think he'll do whatever is asked of him. He did a very good job in pass coverage during his time at Georgia. And, the play that I think most people around the country will remember of Javon Bullard is in the Peach Bowl a few years ago. Makes a big hit on Marvin Harrison Jr., breaks up a pass. that basically keeps Georgia alive in that game, the game they wind up winning there at the end. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we see him play a lot of nickel in the NFL, but I think he's up for it. Did a great job at that while he was at Georgia, and I think he's primed to get to Green Bay and to be a defender that matters on a Green Bay team that I'd expect's got to be one of the favorites in the NFC this year.
That hit on Harrison, I remember in the Peach Bowl, was a legitimate hit. He wasn't anything dirty about it, but Harrison didn't return, and Ohio State was never the same after that without Harrison. So that was one of the key plays of that game. And the national championship game, he had 2 interceptions. I think he only played a half. And talk about his performance in that national championship game. Was it a TCU?
Yes, it was. And it was funny. He was the defensive MVP of both of those playoff wins for Georgia, played really well against Ohio State. And then he hurts his shoulder at the end of the first half in TCU, but Georgia didn't need him at that point. He had 2 interceptions. I think he had fallen on a fumble. He had done a very good job of getting the best of TCU. That was one of those games, one of the more bizarre games that I've ever covered, where you just sort of knew by probably halfway through the first quarter, like, all right, Georgia's going to win this one. It's sort of by how much. And Javon deserves a lot of credit. He made some big plays in that game, kind of sealed the deal right before halftime with a big interception. So he came up clutch again. That was a guy at the end of that season. That was just his first season as a starter for Georgia. They knew well before then that they could rely on him to make big plays against Ohio State, and then came up big against TCU as well.
Green Bay has a lot of Georgia people who kept the G on their helmets and just changed it from the black and red to green and gold. And talk about Devontae Wyatt. He's a guy that took a rookie year, was kind of struggling to figure it all out. Last year, took a gigantic step up. Really good pass rusher, has a really good motor, and we're all looking forward to seeing what he can do in year 3.
I thought it was great to see Devontae take that step forward this past season, because I think there were legitimate questions about him going to the NFL, because he'd been lined up against Jordan Davis, who went earlier in that draft to the Eagles. Sort of wondered, okay, what is Devontae going to do elsewhere? I think it took him a little while to sort of understand what he was getting into, but I thought he had a great second season. I think he's someone that, I think it would have been easy after that first season to maybe write him off and say, well, maybe he wasn't quite as good as some of his draft stock, and obviously where Green Bay took him in the first round, but super pleased with the way he took a step forward in his second season. I think he's a guy that they can rely on that defensive front. I think he's going to grow from last season and have another productive season in 2024.
Quay Walker was another one that took a gigantic step. He came out early, a lot of pressure on him, got ejected from 2 games, rookie mistakes. I don't know if middle linebacker is his ultimate position, because he's a long strider who can really pick up the distance. I'm wondering if they move him more to the outside. The Packers are going from a 3-4 to a 4-3. I'm wondering if they can put him on the wider side. He can use his pursuit and use his drop back into coverage talents much more effectively this year.
I think he's up for the challenge, because he did play a little outside while he was at Georgia, and he's one of those guys. Georgia's had a very strong run during Kirby Smart's time as the head coach of putting out really talented linebackers. And Quay was a guy, he didn't rack up a ton of stats while he was there at Georgia, because Georgia was super deep at inside linebacker. Nakobe Dean went a little later in that same draft. Channing Tindall, another guy. They kind of mixed in and out as far as the linebackers, but Quay's been a tackling machine. It's been fun just to look at some of the box scores of the games he's had for the Packers. I think he's one of those guys that you get him on the field, whether he's inside or with this new change of the defense, they move him more outside. I think he's going to be someone who tracks the ball down, is going to make a lot of plays.
Yeah, he had he had an interception return for a touchdown against the Bears week 1, and was really all over the field. There was another first-round pick that the Packers took, and that was Stokes, the quarterback. And boy, he suffered a bad injury up in Detroit. He hurt his knee, ankle, and then suffered a Lisfranc injury, which is back to from the Napoleonic Wars or whatever. Was the doctor who diagnosed this foot injury, but it's difficult to come back from. So last year he struggled a little bit. They're hoping he can come back this year and fulfill his potential because he had a very good rookie year.
Definitely. And he was someone that was fun to follow while he was at Georgia. He was a really late ad for Georgia when he got there. He was like a signing day addition where it was like, well, we got another scholarship. Let's give this Eric Stokes kid a scholarship. And he winds up being an All-SEC player. I think he might have been an All-American in 2020. And yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is his health because his speed is such a big piece of his game and his ability to get back and cover. So definitely a guy that I think has the talent, but you know as well as anybody that it's a lot of wear and tear in the NFL. And like you said, he's had a lot thrown his way. I think he's fully capable, but be very intrigued just to see how he bounces back from those injuries and if he's going to be able to play with those other guys we mentioned on that Packers defense.
We've been talking with Jordan Hill, he publisher down at the Georgia site. If Green Bay fans want to look a little bit more closely at, it seems like the farm system for future Packers, how do they get to your site and how do they follow you on X?
Definitely. Dogs247.com on Twitter, at Jordan Davis Hill, also on Twitter at Dogs247. Like you said, John, you might want to go ahead and study up on some of these guys. They've sort of got the farm system. It's them. It's really the Philadelphia Eagles. And, there's a few other teams that have done a good job of drafting Georgia players. So good to study up now, and especially in this football season, we may see some more guys head to Green Bay by the time we are in next year's draft.
Well, we appreciate the insight, and thank you for taking time to join us today.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
So now let's look at the second round, and the Packers at pick 41 traded back 4 spots, added a 5th and 6th round pick, and they took Edgerrin Cooper, the linebacker from Texas A&M, 6'2", 229, runs a 4.55. He's from Covington, Louisiana. And joining us is the Texas A&M site publisher, Carter Carls. Carter, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, John.
Well, we talked a little bit yesterday, and we have one thing in common. We're both enthusiastic about Edgerrin Cooper. He improved tremendously from last year to this past year. I had never really paid much attention to him until I saw a Mel Kiper draft. Well, and he said that Edgerrin Cooper at times was in his top 5 picks during the year in his mock drafts. He had him going to Dallas at 24, and they showed some highlights of it, and he looked just terrific with burst and acceleration and a tremendous athlete. Tell us about Cooper.
Yeah, you said it. The guy, the number one thing with him is athleticism. The guy just explodes to the ball. It doesn't look like a 4.55 40 when you turn on the tape, right? Like he just can get to the ball in a hurry, and really just his improvement over the last year is something that you like to see, because I think there's optimism that he's far from a finished product. That just the step that he took from the 2022 to the 23 season was tremendous. And depending on who you talk to, a lot of people thought that he was worthy of maybe going in the first round. But I think because of the positional value of linebackers these days, that's why he ends up in a place like 45th. But I think he definitely has the case as the best linebacker in this draft class, and at bare minimum, you're going to get a phenomenal special teams player as well. So he should be somebody that I would think contributes immediately, and then if he just continues to grow, this could be a really good player.
Yeah, he reminds me of someone that would have been drafted by the Chicago Bears over the last 10 years at linebacker, one of those really fast linebackers, or also I'm dating myself, but Wilbur Marshall type in the 80s, where the key for me watching linebacker play is acceleration and going from 0 to 60 immediately. Clay Matthews had that for the Packers. Charles Woodson, the safety, had that for the Packers. You look for acceleration, and this guy has it.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like you're fast-forwarding a play sometimes when you watch him close on the quarterback. And, he did it against some of the best competition. I mean, Alabama, he had 3 sacks in that game, and that's the game you got to turn on, because that's the game where he was everywhere. But because of that acceleration you talk about, there are times where it just looks like he's everywhere. He is truly a sideline to sideline linebacker. He's the kind of guy that you want to have in 2024, this new age of football. And so, yeah, that's the number one attribute, athleticism, and within that, acceleration for sure.
The Packers are switching from a 3-4 defense to a 4-2-5 primarily. And the two linebackers could be Quay Walker, who is very similar in traits. He played for Georgia a couple of years ago and was drafted in the first round, and Cooper. And if those are the two linebackers, one guarding one side of the field, one guarding the other, they're going to have the speed to prevent the running backs from getting around the corner and the wide receivers from turning the corner. So it's going to be really interesting to watch them play.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Cooper as far as the next step with him is when you're going 1,000 miles per hour, sometimes you can over pursue, sometimes you can guess wrong and whiff on a tackle. So that'll be the next thing for him. But like I mentioned, if he's trying to beat a running back to the corner, he's probably going to win. If he needs to, sack the quarterback and there's not enough time to do it, he may prove you wrong. I mean, that guy just closes so quick. It's just a matter of, sharpening those instincts, sharpening, the IQ of, hey, where do I go on this play? Where do I go on this run sort of deal, and not over pursuing.
Sometimes NFL teams use the best traits of a defender to his disadvantage. And they used to do that with Ray Lewis a lot, where he was so quick to pursue that they would get him going the wrong way and, put somebody right behind him going the other way, and he'd run himself out of the play. But I think they stopped doing that because it just made Ray Lewis mad. And so the next play, he'd play so much better. We talked yesterday a little bit where when it comes, I was watching some of his tape, and I can watch that Edgerrin Cooper's tape all day long in terms of the hits and the burst to the ball and the speed. Just really interesting. And years ago, when I did some work for the Raiders on game day, I would write rookie reports for the Raiders. Did that for over 20 years. And I met the Marquette side also. So when Tom Crean was there, Jack Harbaugh was the old coach, football coach assistant at Michigan under Bo Schembechler, and then he went down to Western Kentucky before he retired. And he came to Marquette, so I would take him out to lunch and pick his brain as to how to describe, what do you look for in linebackers? What do you look for in offensive linemen when you're scouting? And he said, for linebackers, I would go to the basketball gym, put the ball in the middle of the jump circle, and have the person sprint from one side of the basketball court, one end line to the other end line, and pick the ball up. And if they bent over and labored to do it, to pick it up, they weren't athletic. But if they did it all without breaking, and they just kind of scooped it up and went, go the way, that guy's athletic. And 2 or 3 plays where Cooper picks up fumbles, he does it the Jack Harbaugh way. He just comes in, doesn't break stride. You can tell that guy has his athleticism personified.
Yeah, 100%. And even just watching him explode through tackles, explode through sacks. I mean, the guy's not just, closing on the ball. He's finishing, right? He's getting through the guy that he's trying to tackle. And, that speaks to the level of body control that you have, the balance you have, and the overall athleticism you've got. Yeah, you're definitely right on that. There are a couple plays that you can think to where it's like, man, I don't know how many people are this athletic at that position in the college game. So, it's pretty impressive for sure.
On background, you were giving me information that he likes to hunt. So I think Green Bay might be that Might be a little colder than he's used to, but if he puts on extra thermals and I'm sure they'll get the right gear. But what does he like to hunt?
Yeah, he loves to hunt some hogs. I don't know if they've got hogs up in Green Bay, but before every Arkansas game, it's pretty funny. He would go hog hunting, and then every time A&M would beat Arkansas, he'd post a picture of him and his dead boar or whatever. And, it's pretty funny. But yeah, he's a country kid. He's one of those tough country kids kind of guys. He even kind of has that country twang in his voice. So yeah, it's a cool deal. I guess I don't know if it happened before he got to A&M. It sounded like he always had that country in him. It's from Louisiana, but I think A&M just sort of brought out all the country out of him. So yeah, you may see him hunting a little bit up in Green Bay.
How is he dropping in coverage? Is he strictly a blitz, run stuffer guy, pursuit guy, or can he drop into coverage and hang with the tight ends or wide receivers?
He did a lot of blitzing at A&M, but I do think he is capable of dropping into coverage. There weren't a lot of plays that stood out as far as him either getting badly beat or him making a crazy play. I think they just liked using him off the edge as a blitzer, as a run stuffer, as I said. But I do think he has that capability. I just don't know if he's super, super elite at it or anything.
In college basketball, the 3-point shot is the great deodorant. It covers up a lot of smells and weaknesses. In football, it's pass rush. That's the great deodorant because you can hide a lot of smells in the secondary and whatever. If you can rush the passer and make him less accurate. So how did they blitz him? Did they blitz him from all sides, or was it mostly up the A gap and B gap around the center, or was he versatile? He could go pretty much every which way.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it seemed a lot off the edge, but definitely somebody that can do it from everywhere. He's a guy who, he's 6'3", 230. He can take on bigger dudes, but he is a better guy off the edge with his speed, getting around the corner. So, from what I can recall, the majority of it was off the edge. But yeah, I think he's good enough to where he can do it from everywhere. They like to use him as a Tasmanian devil where he's just everywhere, So you would definitely see it from all sorts of spots.
We're talking with Carter Carls from the Texas A&M site, and he's giving us background on Packers' second-round pick, number 45, drafted 45th, Edgerrin Cooper. And if Marquette fans or actually Marquette fans, I was thinking 2 steps ahead. Give our best regards to Buzz Williams. We appreciated what he did up in Marquette in Milwaukee and watched him. Boy, he almost pulled out that Houston game. He seems to be doing a good job down there. So give him our best if you can. Also, if we want to look more at your site, where can we find your site and where can we find you on Twitter or X?
Yeah, 247 Sports. You can find us at gigem247.com. Gigem, Gigem. And then my Twitter handles, I still call it Twitter. I guess it's X, at Carter Carls. So CarterKarels.
Great. Well, thank you for taking time. It was very insightful, and we'll definitely try to check back. And next year, there's a lot of A&M prospects out there, so it could be Christmas morning again in a year. We'll check back with you. Thanks for taking time out.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Let's go to day 3 with the Packer draft. And in round 5, pick number 169, the Packers took Katan Oladapo, the safety from Oregon State. And joining me today is Andy Machado from Beaver Blitz, the Oregon State site. Appreciate the information. Appreciate the background information and appreciate the time for joining us.
Absolutely. Catan is a great one.
Tell us a little bit about him. I know that the Packers had the weakest safety room in the NFL last year by far. They didn't have a very good weak safety, didn't have a strong safety, they didn't tackle very well, and the Packers went way into it and drafted 3 safeties. And tell us what Catan did at Oregon State.
Yeah, Catan's story is just such a great one. I've covered Oregon State football now for 18 years, and he is,
wow.
I can count on one hand, I have my favorite players, and he is one of them. And great story out of Portland Central Catholic High, came in as a preferred walk-on at Oregon State. Wow. And by the end of his career, he was a team captain, a scholarship player, and a starter. So great story. He's a young man that just makes you smile when you talk to him, has a great attitude, super hard worker, but he works for everything he's gotten. So he tough. He's at 6'1", 180, 190, big bodied safety. Not afraid to just, he's not going to shy away from contact. This year he had a couple interceptions. So sure-handed tackler, just all around what you're looking for in a safety, and that he is going to hit hard. He's going to stay on his guy and, break up some passes. He was number 2 in tackles at Oregon State his senior year. He finished the season with 74 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, and 2 interceptions. So it was a big year for Catan.
Well, it's interesting that the final year of the Pac-12 might have been one of the greatest years they've ever had in terms of talent from top to bottom in football. It seemed like every team had some really good players.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so sad what has happened. Oregon State is one of those teams right now that is looking for a major conference home or rebuilding the Pac-12 as they were left out with Washington State. But yeah, you look at Oregon State had their highest draft pick in over 50 years as Tali Fuaga went number 14, the upright tackle to the Saints. So Oregon State had a really good draft year, as did the entire conference. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and higher heads than me are making those decisions.
Well, the Packers, what their philosophy is in drafting is if they have a weakness, then they address it by taking multiple players. They took Javon Bulliard, a safety in round 2 from Georgia, and then they took safety Evan Williams from Oregon. But when I looked at the scouting reports, those guys could play more free safety as opposed to strong safety. They're better cover guys. Oladapo seems like more of a strong safety that can really blow things up at the line of scrimmage and really tackle well. Is that what
completely?
You saw?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, he is not going to shy away from contact. He's big, he's physical, and yeah, he's not afraid to mix things up at the line of scrimmage.
Can he cover, or do you basically, if the Packers have 3 other cover safeties, do you put him more in the box and you let the other cover safeties cover?
He can cover, but yeah, if you have some guys that maybe are a little better in coverage, I mean, he's got loose hips. He can move really, really well for his size. But that's his versatility is what makes him so special. But yeah, I do love him in coverage. I love him being able to blow things up. He's a sure-handed tackler, and like I said, he can break up passes. Just all around, he's got a nose for the ball.
One of the one sites had him rated as the 35th overall player, and other websites said no, he's late day 3 or whatever. So, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it depends on what type of scheme you run on defense and how these players fit and such. But how was he to interview? How was he in the locker room?
So great. Like I said, one of my favorite players. I can count them on one hand. Who I would consider a favorite that I've covered, and Catan is right there with some of the best. Brandon Cooks being one of them. Who wide receiver now with the Cowboys, has had a great career. But Catan is just one of those guys. Like I said, he brings a smile. I don't know how much he loves talking to the media, but he does a great job when he's in front of the camera. But he's honest. He's a great teammate. Everyone loves him. Like I said, just a good story. Here's a kid who went from preferred walk-on to team captain, and that speaks volumes about what people think of him as a person, as a player.
Team captain seemed to be a theme of the 11 picks. I think at least 5 of the players the Packers took were team captains, which was interesting. You had mentioned earlier, and wanted to get your opinion on one of the potential foundational pieces of the Green Bay Packers was taken last year in the draft in the second round, tight end Luke Musgrave. And I believe it was with one of the Aaron Rodgers picks that the Packers received, and they took Musgrave. And the thing that struck me about Musgrave, and I remember I covered the Packers for a long time, so I remember his dad was a quarterback. I think he played at Detroit for a little bit, and he probably went around a couple other teams. But one thing about Luke Musgrave, he got hurt in the middle of the year, but at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, every time he catches a ball, he's wide open. So we'll talk about Luke Musgrave.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about, just the ties now with Oregon State, not now with Catan, and then Anthony Perkins moving over to coach secondary there with the Packers. And Luke Musgrave is another great one. Such a football pedigree. He mentioned dad and his uncle. His uncle was Bill Musgrave, who was a big, long-time Oregon quarterback and some NFL ties there. But Lucas is that big, physical tight end. And under Coach Jonathan Smith, Oregon State's past coaching staff, that was what they were looking for. And they utilized tight ends so efficiently in that system, and that Oregon State had a lot of small, really fast, speedy wide receivers, and then you have a big tight end that's fast and can move well. Luke was one of these guys that we didn't get to see a whole lot of at Oregon State. He struggled to catch balls early as a true freshman. Catching was something he was working on. He had the size and the speed, but then it was working on actually, making the catches. We saw then his junior year in college, he actually was. We started to see the Luke Musgrave that we all expected we would see until a knee injury took him out in game, I think, 2 or 3 of that year. And then Oregon State never saw him again because then he decided to opt into the NFL draft. He had that size, he had the speed, and he had all those intangibles that NFL teams are looking for. So just a great player. Again, grown up with the game, so he has such a knowledge of football and what an offense is trying to do. So fun to watch his success last year when he was in. And again, just another good teammate, another good locker room guy.
What's interesting, the Packers probably had the worst tight end room 2 years ago in the NFL in terms of talent. And last year's draft might have been the greatest draft ever for tight ends. It seems like there's Hall of Fame tight ends. Detroit got one. Buffalo got one in the first round. So when that happens, you get some really, really good ones. And then the Notre Dame one went to New Orleans, and then it came down to there's Luke Musgrave, who had those 2 great games, just unbelievable games, those first 2, and then he hurt his knee. And so they didn't have a lot of tape on him, so people were wary. But and the Packers drafted Kraft in the 3rd round just after him, so they took another really good tight end. And if they could reduce the wear and tear on Luke Musgrave and have Kraft do some heavy lifting and blocking and just use him on more passing situations, prolong his career and his durability, Green Bay is looking. He can get over the middle like nobody's business behind and really stress the safeties.
Yeah, I think that's the big trend we're seeing in the NFL now. And I think Travis Kelce obviously has done some service to that. Is we're seeing now tight ends are not just blocking anymore. They're great receivers. They have more speed than maybe they had 10, 15 years ago. So you need that guy that is just, there's kind of a fine line between a big body receiver and a tight end. So we're seeing kind of that hybrid, and it's so valuable to any NFL team, especially a guy that can block and go out and catch a pass and run a route. But yeah, Luke he can run impeccable routes and then the ability, with his speed to get open. And I think a lot of defenses maybe do shy away from tight ends. They don't maybe give them the respect that they deserve. Gosh, how many times do we see Kelce get open? It's crazy to watch that they leave him wide open all the time, but it's also great route running, it's speed. And I'm excited. I think Beaver Nation's excited to see what his NFL career can look like.
Yeah, they run some schemes for them. And I don't know what it is about defenses, but if a tight end engages in blocking or goes down like he fakes, it's almost like somebody puts a cloaking device on him, because if he gets up and he runs, he's just completely ignored. And that's what Musgrave does. He'll act like he's staying in to block, or he'll fall down and he'll get up, but he's got the speed then to really stress the perimeter of defenses. So he's going to be interesting to watch in the future. You mentioned, tell us a little bit about the Anthony Perkins. So he was was he an assistant coach with Beavers?
He was the quarterback coach at Oregon State. And then just in February was hired. I think he's a defensive back assistant now with Green Bay. I don't know his exact title. And he was only in Corvallis, I believe, 2 years. But another good coach. The guys loved him, and so I have a feeling maybe that also helped Catan in the draft is going to a coach that is aware of what he can do and aware of the player he is.
Always helps to have deep intel on these players, but there's wide variety, but of opinions, ratings, but it all depends on system fit. And what's interesting is if it just gives you some maybe an extra linebacker, a fast linebacker, if you need basically where you can fit Oladapo in. So, but I appreciate it. We've been talking to Eddie Machado from talk about your website and where you are on Twitter in case more people want to hear or ask you questions.
Yeah, I've been the publisher of BeaverBlitz.com. We're part of the 24/7 Sports family of networks. I am at Angie Machado 1 on Twitter, so feel free to reach out, ask any questions. Like I said, you guys are getting an amazing player and even better person in Catan. I'm really excited for him and to see what he does. And I was saying off the air, it'll be interesting because Oregon State's colors are orange and black, and the rival Oregon is yellow and green. So Catan has this, he loves to dye his hair, different colors. So it'll be interesting to see Catan with green and yellow. But like I said, you guys are getting a really good person.
Well, if he plays like Dennis Rodman, we'll welcome that.
He is not like Dennis Rodman.
This might look like him, but no, it's great. No, I appreciate you taking the time out, and it's always insightful going to the publishers and know what's going on because you cover them 365, actually 24/7, 365. So,
yeah. and got to know them as recruits. You get to know them as high school players, and to see their development and how they grow over the 4 or 5 years they're in college. Like I said, it's just fun because I've done this a long time and have covered some really great players over the years, and to watch them grow and into their roles in NFL and beyond is fun to watch.
Well, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Mark, first of all, such a delight to have you. It appears as if with their 11 picks, the Packers checked all the boxes in the 2024 draft. How did you see it? I heard somebody on the radio after the first pick went offense and just railing on Brian Gutekunst. But as we well know, he went heavy defense after that.
Yeah, he's got some nice defensive players, but he's going to really need good offensive linemen because you're now talking about the next generation of quarterback, and that's Jordan Love. The way the Packers have been structured and the way they have had to try and build rosters around in-place Hall of Fame quarterbacks, now they're doing something a little different, trying to build around a quarterback who might be the next Hall of Famer. And so that's what's been happening. And you're going to need offensive linemen, and you're going to need versatile guys. They played musical chairs and somehow have survived for years with Adam Stenovich first, Luke Butkus later running the offensive line with Steno's promotion. But they have just found guys to plug in and be able to play and function without giving up so much, having to play second and third string offensive linemen. So, yeah, if Jordan Morgan is the left tackle of the future or anywhere near as stable as David Bakhtiari was for his first 8-9 years, then they got something.
And as you're aware, these linemen are versatile, and that's the way they like them there in Titletown. John Dodds, the Packers historian, around for about the same amount of time as Mark. What was your impression initially of the draft before we get into some questions from you to Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting draft in that the Packers didn't need to go quarterback, wide receiver. Those were the two strengths of the draft. Gutekunst has hit the third day of the last two drafts, where he's gotten starters on day 3 of 2022 and in 2023. And when you do that, you get maximum flexibility in terms of you can pay Jordan Love $50 million if you have positions where they're underpaid. And I think if you take the wide receiver room of the Packers and the tight end room and put them together, I think the total is less than $20 million for the year. And Devontae Adams makes $26 million per year. So there's an opportunity to be had here if they can hit on some complementary pieces to the last two drafts. I think I'm getting a vibe, and I'd like to get Mark's comment. I'm getting a vibe of it might be 2009 or it might be 1995, where they're the youngest team in the NFL, and getting rid of Bakhtiari and some of these other players like Campbell and Aaron Jones. They're going to get even younger this year, but they have a chance to take the next step if this draft hits.
Yeah, Goody's had a very high hit rate in the last two for sure. And you're right, just from the historical perspective, John, the Favre era team was built and it was the 5-year plan, and it hit its zenith in 5 years. McCarthy and Rodgers, and Ted Thompson, really, 5-year plan, hit in 5 years. This is Gutekunst, his whack at it with Matt LaFleur, and now with his chosen one in Jordan Love. And so he's had to, just like the other two regimes, had to purge the roster of the Favre loyalists to the Rodgers team that had to be built. And now the same thing is happening from the Rodgers championship team that they tried to string out for so long and they just couldn't deliver one more, to now the Jordan Love team. And to do it this way with so much first contract talent is remarkable, but it only seems to be hastening the expectation rate a little too quickly, in my opinion, because this will just, again, be year 2 with the QB starting. So they got a ways to go, but they're certainly on the right track.
Yeah, they won't sneak up on anybody, that's for sure. Dave Heineck is on set with me, and David is our friend, our sponsor. We appreciate him from Business Fitness. Ladies and gentlemen, he's also a great Packers fan like all of you, and he knows his stuff. So I'm sure you have comments, your own thoughts on the draft, and then we can talk to John and to Mark about anything you'd like in that realm.
Well, the draft is one of my favorite times of the year, and it's like Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter. Just absolutely love it. Really interesting. They're really going for speed, obviously. And that last pick, Kalen King from Penn State, the cornerback, he's got something to prove because he really fell in the draft. And I just can't wait for to see him at camp and to see how he responds, because I think he's got something to prove, like a lot of our receivers did a year ago.
Any questions you might have for Mark? Maybe we can just continue with, I think, J.D., you were telling me that King was highly touted, and then he had a bad game and lost all his confidence.
Sure. One of the things we're going to do this week and next week on the show is we our Marquette site's on the 24/7 network, and there's a family of websites, about 130 of them. And what I did is I contacted the various websites from Penn State, Oregon State, Duke, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Arizona to talk a little bit more, get more detail about these players from perspective of the media that actually covered them every day for years. And the Penn State people thought that that Kalen King was going to be a number 1 pick, probably a top 20 pick. And that's what they thought coming into the year. Don't know what happened. I know that he had a bad experience against Marvin Harrison, which joined the club. There's a lot of people that do. but he became fragile, I guess. And some of the scouts said, "Wow, I don't want to take a chance on this guy." And when you're in the seventh round, and Mark can maybe talk to this, Goody was saying that in the fourth round, after the fourth round, it seemed like the board got thin for him. A lot of teams were saying that people stayed with NIL in college a little bit more, and that this draft wasn't as deep as the previous ones. But in the seventh round, that seems to be pretty good value, taking a shot at King, the quarterback, and Michael Pratt, the quarterback from Tulane. I thought that was pretty good value in the last round.
John Dodds loved every word. That was great stuff.
Well, great. Thanks to our guest and all our publishers who give us needed information on the Packer draft.
And indeed, our friend, our sponsor, Dave Heineck, is here. He knows something about the Packers. He knows even more about business fitness. David, talk to us a little bit about that.
Our firm, Business Fitness, has been in business for 21 years, and we got started with cloud computing and an offering called NetSuite. And fast forward to today, most companies in the United States going public run on NetSuite. So with a 21-year background in NetSuite, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. It's been a wonderful platform to work with. I love what we do. We genuinely help companies use this business software to run their businesses. And we have 4 clients, our unicorns. That's a private company worth over $1 billion. So NetSuite certainly scales. We have clients with numerous doing business in numerous countries. But it's great for small companies as well. So 3-person startup company, we have those clients as well in any industry, any size business. And it's a real treat to just be able to work with great technology and get the most out of it for our clients. A lot of clients come to us needing to have remediation to turn their implementations around because they, for whatever reason, didn't get going on the right foot. We like to do it right from the get-go, but 2/3 of our clients come to us and are really grateful because we're the white knights and we save the day for the clients.
All right, everybody, I have to give credit to my friend, former colleague, our associate producer with our producer, Jason Ruck. Dave Heineck, he brought this up. You are the best value since the Pack went after Kabir Basha Biamila in the later rounds, and he turned into a sack attack specialist.
There you go. Thank you. It's been great being here.
Yeah, I know you're a wonderful Packers fan and had a tremendous businessman with Business Fitness. We are so appreciative of you. So it's just really good to see you in general.
Yeah. Feeling is mutual.
Thank you so much. That is the latest edition, everybody, of the Green Bay Football Show, the 2024 Draft Edition. We'll see you next time. Take good care. Go Pack, and God bless.